Hello again. Welcome to Chess Time with Jeremy. This is a game between me as black and my opponent as white. Let us begin. One second. I gotta get this correct. I apologize. It is me actually as white and my opponent as black. Let us begin. We do the Bobby Fischer's favorite opening. My opponent is trying to go into the Sicilian defense, or somewhat of the Caro-Kann. It all depends upon where he wants to go. This is an open move. It could go Sicilian or Caro-Kann. So it doesn't always have to be the Sicilian when you push the pawn like this. So remember that. And I take. Takes. See, what he did was my opponent H I took on with my king pawn, which now he has two pawns in the center, but he also has a weak thing that I can bring my bishop to b5 and attack his king. So he traded a little bit. He got the center, but he also opened up his queen side for an attack. See, I have a pawn majority on the queen side. So there's gains and there's losses about that, so always remember that. He's not always in the advantage part just because he has two pawns in the center. Okay, it's my turn, and I push the queen pawn. Now I have an open position for my bishops, both bishops and my queens, and I can push the pawn, my c pawn, trade that, and we'll have one pawn like we did before that I can take with my bishop, attacking his f7 square. He protects that with his king pawn to e6. I bring my bishop out, like I said, check, why not? He weakened his c pawn, remember that? He left it right open. He brings his bishop to d7, blocking my check. I bring my knight to c3. I don't want to take, because if I take, he can bring his knight out. Development. And now I'll develop. If he takes, I can bring a knight right here, and later on I can bring my bishop to protect the knight and check, and maybe even fork the queen. So remember, develop. Don't worry always about taking if you're in check. Make sure you have a defender though. Then he brings his knight out, he's developing. He's not worried about this because he actually wants me to take so he can bring his knight to d7 and get centralization with his knight. I bring my queen out. Brings his bishop, f to f8 to b4, pinning my knight, and also preparing for castling, as you see. And finally, I decide to take, because now I'm going to bring out my other piece, my other bishop, so that maybe I can castle queenside if I want. And so now I bring my dark squared bishop out, removing the pin, and also I have the ability to castle either queenside or kingside. It depends. So what my opponent does is he takes my knight, which is okay, but not really okay, because he surrenders a bishop, and I take. You see? Now, true, he has two knights. I have a knight and a bishop, which in the end game, if we can trade off the knights, the queens, the rooks, and I have a bishop in an open position dominates both sides, the king side, the queen side, and the king side when it comes down to an end game. He brings his knight in to e4. The reason is he wants to take maybe wants to take my bishop, or it's just for centralization of pieces. And I can even bring my knight up there if I want to, but I could get kicked out by the f pawn. So always remember, unless you have total domination, like if this pawn was gone and I put a knight here and this knight was gone, I would have nothing to kick my knight out of the center. So sometimes things are not, sound. Like I can even move my knight, bring my pawn up, getting rid of his knight. So it all depends. Knight castle. That's a good safety move. Now I've connected both rooks. We're ready for the middle to attack. He takes my bishop, thinking that if he doubles my pawns, that it would be a weakness. But I actually say to myself, I'm not going to double my pawns because I have a pawn majority on the queen side. I'm going to take with my queen. So I do queen takes knight, and then also I'm taking the half open file. But he could bring it, like you're thinking, he could bring his rook to c8, attacking my queen. But he decides rather than to do that, to connect his rooks. But one thing that my opponent doesn't have, he doesn't have his queen out of the way. See, when you connect both rooks, now you have the ability to attack, because all your pieces are developed sometimes. But sometimes they're not. They're not coordinated all together. So remember that. Coordination with your pieces is very important. I move my king back to d3. Getting out of the way of, remember, the rook to c8. He brings his rook to c8. He's attacking my c2 pawn, but not right now. Because as we think of this, we always have to. I want to also throw this in too, that there's such a thought as that there's always drawbacks. There's always drawbacks to moves. Like when he moved, he left behind the protection of his a7 pawn, which I can bring a bishop, but I don't have a bishop. Let's say I did have a bishop, I could bring a bishop to attack the a7 pawn. So every move has a weakness. I play knight to g5. He brings his queen to c7. He doesn't want to take because there's a lot of threats that he sees. But actually it would have been better for him to have taken. I will step back and allow you to see he moved to c7. I'm going to leave it here, and I'll have you remember the queen moves there. Now there's mate in 2. You see it? Right. Queen to c2. That was a blunder, a double question mark. And let's see, do you see the other move that ends the game? Of course you do. You're very smart. Queen takes h7, checkmate. And that is how the game ends between Bags and H. Thank you, and God bless.